Here we come, blue and white, and we're looking good. You'll be in for a fight, and we fight pretty good. Getting goals is our job, and we get goals good. Looking good, we are Carlisle United.
Hello everyone and welcome to the Brunton Bugle, the best place to get your Carlisle United fix in the podcast world. I'm Lee Rooney.
And I'm Mike Booth.
On today's episode, we look back on Keith Millen's first win in charge of the Blues that they eventually saw off plucky non-league opponents Horsham at the weekend, and we look ahead to the first Cumbrian derby with fans in attendance in 57 years as Barrow come to Brunton Park. One day I will nail it. And again, I rushed it just a little bit too much. Like, I never actually test it really. I just sort of put about three and a bit lines in and hope that it'll fit in. But there you go. So we're back for another episode of the Brunton Bugle. Obviously, Mike's joining me today. Mike, how's it going, mate?
Yeah, good. I'm a little bit more positive than the last time we spoke.
Yeah, a little bit. Let's not get too excited.
Yeah.
It's only Horsham. But no, yeah, it's been a while since you've been on, actually, hasn't it? I think it's back when we were still discussing managers and stuff like that. So, we'll get some initial early thoughts on Keith Millen's time in charge so far. Let's get into the news then first, mate. Just a couple of little bits to cover here. In fact, there's another extra bit just come in just before we're recording there. So, the FA Cup second round, obviously, as everyone will already know, we're through to the second round of the Cup, and the draw took place on Monday night after the Dagenham against Salford game on ITV4, and United have been drawn to face Shrewsbury Town from League One at Brunton Park in the second round. The game will see the return to Brunton Park of strikers Ryan Bowman and Sam Cosgrove, who are both part of the Salop squad. The game will take place on the weekend of the 4th of December. We're not going to be one of the live TV games. We now know that because we are not Salford FC, so that's not going to happen. But I mean, whether it will be one of the TV highlight things, I don't know. There's only 20 fixtures in this round, isn't it? 6 have already been shown on telly, so how many are actually going to be shown in terms of highlights and that kind of thing? I'm not sure. The TV games they've chosen, I'd only really maybe take issue with like the Rochdale, Sheffield Wednesday, Plymouth ones and things like Salford. That. And Salford. I mean, there's an argument Salford, as a non-league team. I mean, Chesterfield are arguably got more money than Salford right now from what they've been spending on wages and I mean Boreham Wood against St Albans, a local derby, I suppose. But I mean, it's not one for the purists. That one, I think it's fair to say, is it?
No, but I mean it's one of them, isn't it, where the draw will be after the game, and sort of for either of them clubs to reach the third round will be massive for them, and I think the whole studio will be sort of rooting for the winner to get like Manchester United away, and they'll probably just get like Plymouth or someone.
Or Altree or someone like that. An old league team has got through probably, but no, there, look. Okay, well, let's move to the next bit, Mike. This is something that emerged the other day. The United Sports Trust, or Kiosk, the official sports club, whatever you want to call them, they put out a statement. I mean, they've got a bit of criticism recently, haven't they, from quite a number of quarters. I think John Coleman's been quite strong on them in a few columns as well, in terms of not really doing the jobs in that sense. And there's, a lot of fans reacting and saying, what are you actually doing, what are you thinking? And they put out a statement to counter that. Just under 1,200 words to say f*** all, basically. Well, I've read it 2 or 3 times now, God help me. And I'm none the wiser. Essentially, they're basically just saying, we can't say anything, with potential financial repercussions if we don't say anything. There seems to be no feeling of the urgency that the club faces, not just in terms of the threat of relegation this season, but just the future threat of the club.
I'm going to level with you here. I haven't read this statement because I didn't read this one, and I didn't read the last one either because I've read the ones before it, and they're all just the same. They don't say anything. Like, it's a waste of time reading it. I mean, I kind of wish that, when I was at uni and I struggled to keep up with my word counts and stuff, that, I had someone from the trust with me, because they can just use a lot of words to say absolutely nothing. Like, every single one, it's the same. Like, there's no point. And, what are they doing? We have other fans, when you're on their podcasts and stuff, and they're saying, it must be good having, the fans' trust sort of owning part of the club. No, it isn't. It's just...
I mean, this is one for the State of the Club episode when we eventually get around to that. Hopefully, we might be able to do it this Sunday. I need to check whether Dan's available on Sunday or not. But I mean, the biggest problem is they've only got 400 members, so they haven't really got a mandate. So the club can effectively ignore them, really. If they were like Exeter's Supporters Trust, which has over 3,000 members or something like that. Now that's a pressure group. That's a group that can say to them, book your ideas up here. We can potentially, vote with our feet and things like that. There's no collective carrying out. That's a big problem, and we've seen this Uniter 40-year group has appeared in the last week. Might come up to something. We never know. It's something that's been started, and good luck to everyone who's working on that. And there needs to be something anyway. But I think we could go on all day about that. So probably best to leave it for this episode for the future episode. Just one little bit that's coming just before we recorded here, actually. You might have seen this story, Mike. Shelter, basically, they've been pushing. The Shelter is the homeless charity you may all be aware of. So they've been working with Premier League clubs, and what they wanted to do was, on Boxing Day, highlight obviously the fact that a lot of people are still homeless at Christmas, and they wanted to have a hashtag No Home Kit campaign where Premier League clubs wear their away kits for one game at home, basically, to highlight homelessness, and there'll be fundraising that would take place and things like that, etc., etc. Brilliant idea. I mean, really, really clever marketing in the way they've done it, and all the Premier League clubs were like, great, let's do it. It sounds like a good idea. The Premier League have turned around and said, no, rules-wise, you can't do it. The rules won't allow for it. I mean, this is the Premier League that allowed Man United to bend the rules to get Cristiano Ronaldo the number 7 shirt on his return. So it shows where their priorities are, doesn't it? But the EFL, to their credit, have come out and said, yeah, we're fine with that. Sounds like a good initiative. And United have literally just tweeted just before we record here today to say that they're planning to support this initiative on Boxing Day by wearing an away kit in the home game against Rochdale. So fair play at the club, and hopefully there'll be a bit of fundraising done in relation to that. It's the club deserves a lot of criticism for a lot of things they do, but actually there is many things they do that are really good as well. And this is another example of one of them, isn't it? Really, so.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's something as well, though, that because we've had it before, where we've had like away games where we sort of could wear blue and we haven't worn blue, and we reckon that it's too much work for the kit man to do from like the Tuesday night to the Saturday kind of thing. So,
Salt for playing red, don't they? So we're okay for the next game.
Well, no, I mean, we play Bradford at home on the 18th, don't we? And then Rochdale is on the 26th. So maybe rather than use the home kit twice in the space of a week, we get the kit man gets some time off.
Yeah, indeed. So there you go. That's United going to be supporting that initiative, which is fantastic news. And just another little bit, we spotted Nigel Clibbins has been doing a few bits with the BBC, hasn't he, this week, talking about the effect in terms of climate change, and obviously linked to COP26 and all stuff like that. There's been a bit of talk of how is climate change affecting football clubs, and in the EFL at the very least, we're at the forefront of that with the flooding that's happened at Brunton Park down the years. And some really interesting insights, wasn't there, from Nigel? I think that it might be a little bit wake-up call to some of our fans in terms of actually how much it costs to run our club, won't it?
Yeah, well, because he mentioned as well that, getting insurance was actually very difficult after the floods, and the EFL actually helped us do that. And which begged the question for me, what happens if we go out of the EFL? But
that's a risk, yeah.
Yeah, but obviously, so like apparently now we have like a huge excess if there's floods again.
It's almost barely not worth having it, isn't it? But you're supposed to have to have it just in case something major happens. And
and to be honest, I mean, I don't want to sound negative here, but it's a case of when it floods again, not if, because the way things are,
Which is where we need to find either a new ground that we can move to, and ideally you'd want your local council to support that. Again, this is something we'll discuss in the State of the Club episode. But you need to basically rebuild Brunton Park and design everything so that the ground floor is effectively a shell that you can allow to flood when there's floods. And basically say that, okay, if flooding happens there, that's fine, because we can refit that within a week, and it's not going to cost us an absolute fortune to do it. Essentially like having the East Stand as it is now, with all the offices on the first floor so they don't flood. But basically, all the bottom ground floor ones, yes, if they flood, it's going to cost you a little bit, but it's not going to cost you a fortune. That's what you're probably looking at. But again, it's the cost of doing that, and whether we can or not, I don't know. To be honest, it's kind of weird. We kind of almost need a big flood to happen, so we can prove that these new flood defences, the extended flood defences, work. To show that the insurers will actually look at the rainfall then, and it didn't flood. And it's not a way you don't want that to happen, but that's the only way.
No,
maybe.
Although knowing insurance companies, they won't care one bit. They'll want every penny that you can get.
Well, indeed. Right, well, that's a new section done, Mike. Let's move on to the match review. It was a bit more of a slog than we might have hoped, this Cal United 2, Horsham 0 result. But in the end, United comfortably secured their place in the next round of the FA Cup after seeing off a spirited performance of their opponents from 3 divisions below us. But the big positive here, Mike, is getting a win and a clean sheet, but there's still a few worrying signs, and there needs to be significant strengthening in the January transfer, and I think we all still accept that, don't we?
Yeah, definitely. And like you said before, it's only Horsham, but but it's a step in the right direction. I mean, it's only fair that we can give some credit, because if we'd lost, we'd be given a hell of a lot of criticism. So, I think Young is maybe, doing enough now to say to the manager, I need to be starting games. I was a little bit disappointed because I was listening on the radio. Millen after the game was saying that he was super impressed with Alessandra and Abraham's work, great, and seemed to hint that he'd have them start in the future because of that.
Well, I've got that down as other points, and I think I will cover that my views on that shortly. But on the game itself, I mean, we never really, I'll be honest with you, Mike, we never looked like we were going to concede a goal in this game. There was one cross early on, there was one free kick drilled in low, and that's literally about it, to be honest. And, they look like a side that was struggling in their league, to be honest. And it's probably, we were lucky we didn't get a team that's at the top of their non-league setup, because if they were, they might have had a bit more of a go at us and might have caused a few problems, possibly. But as it was, they never really looked like they were going to threaten Mark Howard's goal, to be honest, for most of the match. And despite that, though, it was quite a slog to avoid a replay. I mean, didn't score till the 69th minute, and then didn't get the second till the 90th. That's not ideal. That you'd want to get them really seen off by half time. To be honest, a couple of goals before half time, but truth be told, I think we just didn't quite do it in this one, to be honest. But we got over the line, and that's the important thing. The cup, isn't it? You get to the next round, take your prize money, and carry on, really, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, would you say, as a fan, because obviously I wasn't there to sort of notice, but was it visible, sort of the sort of players' body language now with Millen, and sort of did it seem more positive?
That's a good question. Whether it seems more positive, I don't know. There was a noticeable change in style. There's no real lumping the ball up to someone's head, basically, for most of the game. There was long balls played, but it was long balls played for a striker to chase onto to the channels and stuff like that, and over the top to basically take advantage of a slower defence. Unfortunately, Abrahams and Alessandra weren't particularly great at getting anywhere near any of those balls. That was part of the problem. Whereas Fishburne and Young, when they were on, especially Young was very good at doing that. And if you're going to play that style, he'll be absolutely ideal, because I imagine he'd run all day, to be honest. Yeah, I think there was a noticeable start. They all seemed a bit more comfortable in this game than they did against in some of the previous games. I wasn't at Northampton, but we've all seen the footage, and we've all heard from people who were there, and we know that it was bad. It wasn't great. I mean, it's just a hard one to judge, mate. It really is, because you don't know whether we played fairly well and got a comfortable victory, or we've not done really enough and just scabbed a win against a pretty poor side, if we're honest. It's tough. It's a hard one to judge. I mean, he did say before the game he'd pick his strongest side, didn't he?
Yeah.
A few eyebrows raised maybe when you saw this lineup. Obviously, you weren't there, but when you saw the line, what was your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, for me, you can almost have your non-strongest side on paper been stronger than your strongest side, if that makes sense. So, players, say, starting someone like Fishburne, say, he'd really want to go out and have a point to prove, kind of thing. And, he'd be desperate. And same with other young lads, they'd be really up for it. And I think that we could have maybe done with a little bit of that injected into the team. It seems like, I mean, yeah, certain players are getting games without earning them, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. I mean, it was good to see Riley come back in. I was pleased with that. I think he very much earned his place back in the team, and I think he showed what he's all about. He had a couple of nervy moments early on. He lost the ball a couple of times, but he generally was as solid you'd expect, and he drove us forward when he could. Clough on the left, an interesting one. Obviously, Dickinson wasn't fit for this game. Hopefully, he'll be fit this weekend, but it was interesting. He spent a lot of his time drifting away from the left, as you'd expect, coming inside. And to be honest, it's probably a game where you could afford to do that. Maybe you're not going to be punished as much against a Horsham for leaving a little bit of a gap on the left.
Yeah, well, their fullback's probably a plumber, isn't he? But the Bolton fans that I work with said, do not play him on the wing. Just do not do it. So
yeah, he wasn't really.
Take their word for it.
He wasn't really so much as a winger, though. Was he? That's the thing. He was more coming inside, really, and it was just basically it was a position for him at the start of the game, really, and that was it. Mellish tended to slot in there quite a lot on the left throughout the game. I'd imagine if Connor Brown plays in that game when we play in against Barrow at the weekend, he might cause a few more problems for Clough if he tries to do that.
Yeah.
That was an interesting one. I mean, I've avoided it for as long as I possibly can. I mean, Alessandra and Abrahams just doesn't work. Just as Alessandra and Clough didn't work. It's not even the problems with similarities there. It's just Alessandra for the last couple of years has been a great player for us. He really has, and we're big fans of his on this podcast. We've said it before plenty of times. We think in previous seasons when he's played well, we've played well. He's really made the team click. Now he's 33 now. Yeah, I know it's not the oldest age in the world. You know, players play for a lot longer now, but I wouldn't say he's starting to show his age. But you're not seeing quite as much from him now.
Yeah,
and I find when he gets the ball now and the way we're playing, because there's not much movement around him, he's holding on to the ball for far too long. He's not releasing it anywhere near as quick, or not just thinking, I'm just going to get a shot off here. He isn't doing that enough.
For me as well, I mean, so if you think back to Derek Asamoah's goal at Anfield, and you had sort of Harry surging through from midfield, and Asamoah's trying to run him behind, and that freed up space for Harry to do that. Alessandra will not make that kind of run. Alessandra always sort of goes short for the ball, which isn't a terrible thing, like that's sort of what he's about. But Clough could be our sort of Harry carrying the ball into the final third this season. And if the players aren't making the right kind of movement for him to do that, people are just going to close Clough down, and we're not going to see the best out of him either. So, yeah, I'd like to see us have someone to sort of run him behind and cause teams problems, because if you've got someone like Clough in the team, you don't really need your striker dropping deep so much.
No, you don't. And yeah, he's technically a very good footballer, Alessandro, and we all know that. And he uses the ball well. But like I said, the big problem just comes down to the fact that he just holds on to it for too long now. That's the problem. Abrahams. The impression he gives is one of a player that doesn't care. I'm not saying that's the case. Let me say this now. He may well care. He may well have his own sort of style. It's a little bit more languid. Maybe he's a little bit more, he's not all action. But when you're in a relegation fight, that counts as much as what you actually do with the ball and whether you score goals and things like that. The way you appear, because fans will turn on you quickly. They want to see people who actually look like they're working their backside off and they're chasing things down. There was 2 or 3 times where he might not have had much chance of getting to the ball, but you're up against non-league opposition here. You think to yourself, force them into an error, put pressure on them, and he wouldn't, and he didn't chase balls. And there was a couple of times there was area balls as well where they didn't go that far of his head, and he just sort of stood and watched it, and you could see why fans were getting so annoyed. It was infuriating at times, and he got ironic cheers when he got subbed, and I felt maybe a little bit harsh, but he's even testing my patience now to the point where you mentioned there about what Millen said in his post-match comments. He launched a bit of a defence of Abrahams and Alessandro. I think particularly Abrahams as well, saying he was, you mentioned the fact everyone watched the game, basically come out and said, look how well Young and Fishburne did when they came on. They caused all kinds of problems. They looked lively, and he said, oh well, that's down to the work Alessandro and Abrams to tie the defence. I don't 100% buy that, I'm afraid. I just don't, because maybe Alessandro's slight, but Abrahams did not really put that much pressure on the defenders. There was a few times when he really should have been doing a lot more, and I'm not having that one, I'm afraid.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've defended Abrams quite a bit when we signed him. I thought he was a good signing. He's looked good against us a few times. But, I mean, for me, games when he's come on off the bench as well, every single time that I've seen Young come on off the bench, he's looked really up for it, and he's sort of been basically saying to the manager, you need to start me. I really want to start games. Yeah. And whenever I've seen Abrams come off the bench, it doesn't have that sort of work rate and desire, like, to prove a point, basically. It just, surely Young has earned his start ahead of him. Surely. Yeah,
it's getting to the point now. You'd think surely he has. And my worry is you've got a game this weekend with a big crowd. Whether Abrahams can get himself up for it or perform enough in that game, and then if he doesn't, you're going to have quite a boisterous crowd on his back, and that could finish him as a player. It really could.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, there's a few players that I have in this bracket, but they're in kind of the last chance saloonist Football League players. Like, if we go down, their careers are going down with us. Like, and they'll struggle to get another Football League club.
Look at Abrahams, his last 3 clubs, Newport, Leyton Orient and us. You're not getting another EFL club if you go down out the league playing for us and scoring a goal. You're just not. That's the harsh reality of it. Well, let's talk about the 2 lads who came on, Fishburn and Young. I tell you what, it's so lively, the pair of them. I mean, 19 and 17, the ages? I'm not sure if Young's 19 yet or not, but I'll tell you what, they were up for it. And Fishburn, in the space of 60 seconds, I think he won 3 aerial challenges and basically roughed up a couple of defenders a couple of times. And you thought, how is someone like Abrahams, who's 23, 24 now, not looking at that and thinking, maybe I need to do a bit of that as well?
I mean, lack of footballing ability at this level, you can sometimes excuse, but lack of effort, I don't think there's ever an excuse for it.
I think Abrahams has got 3 bookings for us this season. All 3 of them have been for dissent.
Yeah.
It's pointless. If you're going to get booked, get it for putting your foot in and actually, going for some tackles and things like that. But there you go. But yeah, the pair of them did well. I mean, one thing that stands out for me with Fishburn is he didn't actually have any real goal-scoring chances, unfortunately. If you watch, actually, I'll talk about the goals in a second, actually. He probably, with Clough's goal, it was actually going to him, the ball, before it deflected.
I thought that, because some people have said that it was a shot by Clough, but I thought it was like a sort of ball sort of curling across the 6-yard box a little bit.
Yeah, I think it looked like it might have gone wide potentially. So I think, say gone wide, Fishburn would have scored basically.
Yeah.
But no, the few times he won aerial balls, and you know what? His first touch is not perfect. It doesn't like stick to him like, it's not like an Alessandro where the ball comes into him and it really sticks to him when he comes to his feet. It does go away from him a bit, but he's so on his toes. He's so alert. He gets to the loose ball.
Yeah.
Even if it does get a little bit away, not massively away from it. I mean, I'm not talking about, John Mellish hasn't got the greatest touch in the world. The ball gets away from him quite a bit. But in comparison, Fishburn just gets away from him. But he gets that second ball because he's so live and he's got the design, he wants it. And that's
sometimes that can be an absolute weapon because, your first touch is a little bit loose and a defender will think, oh, I can win this. And then if they don't get to that ball, then you're away,
Yeah, or you can set yourself off, actually, if you have a decent shot or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing I don't see with Abrahams. I don't see him doing that. When he has a pull touch, he's sort of like, he's just like, I have a little stretch to get to this. There's no like, shit, I need to get that ball now. You didn't see that. But yeah, Fishburn did not look out of place at all. I mean, yeah, he was against Horsham. I know we've got to repeat that, but it shows that he clearly was excelling at the level he was at with Lancaster. And like you say, Young looked lively, and you know what? He's only a little lad, and I'll say it again, comparison-wise, he reminds me a lot of Joe Garner in the way he plays. He's physical, and he's not afraid to get involved with big defenders.
I can see that, yeah.
His goal, arms crossing into the box, probably not the greatest cross in the world, to be honest, when you look back at it, but defender, I mean, it was a bit of a tiring sort of stretch from the defender to get to it, wasn't it, really? And Young's smart, he gets his touch off and then just hammers it into the bottom corner. Good finish, really, and that's exactly what we didn't see from Abrahams or Alessandro. I mean, prior to that, the only chance I can think of, I mean, you've got Mellish's powerful shot, which the keeper saved well. We had header off the line. I think that might have been from Abrahams. I'm not 100%. Or maybe Mellish, I can't remember. And then you've got the Abraham sort of volley, and I look back at that one, I think, put your laces through it. He sort of just scoops it towards goal. There's no I mean, maybe you'll say he's trying to place it, but just hit it, because if it hits someone, it could fly into the back of the net.
Exactly. You're
never going to score that when you that's the kind of effort you're doing. But there you go. So yeah, Young gets his goal, and then obviously late on, brilliant bit of play from Young to chase the ball and win it. Stop it from going out of play for a goal kick in the corner flag. Gets it back to Clough, and like I said, he takes his touch, and like you said, I think the ball probably would have ended up with Fishburne for a tap in. But as it comes off the defender and it goes in the back of the net, 2-0.
Yeah.
Job done. Into the next round, can't complain too much. We've obviously already mentioned there a bit of credit to Millen for the fact that he's recognised pretty quickly that we can't play long ball football, and he's trying to get us to play a certain style. And like I said, we might not see the proper benefits of that until maybe mid-December, possibly, when they've had a good 3 or 4 weeks. It's almost, in a weird way, you can almost wish we'd kind of get knocked out of the FA Cup, because that gives him 2 weeks solid to work on it, wouldn't it? But
yeah, and it's not going to work every game. There'll be games where we have to go more direct, but if we go direct with them balls and behind that you sort of mentioned about, you can create things from that.
If you're doing that, you need to have Young and Fishburne on the pitch, because they're the only ones who are going to chase those balls.
Yeah.
Alessandra's not going to chase them, and Abrahams is not going to chase them, so there you go. Before we move on to the match preview section, Mike, got to give a big shout out to the Lardy Army. Also, you had John from the Lardy Army on last week to discuss all things Horsham, and full credit to them. The 280 odd of them made an absolute racket the whole game, singing songs. They were dressed in all kinds of weird suits. I saw Jesus in the away end as well. He was there. They had their block of lard in the rugby club beforehand, and they were singing their songs about no surrender to the low-fat spread and stuff like that. They also sang some songs songs by Gary Glitter, which if I was going to advise them anything, I'd drop those ones. Probably not the best ones to choose, but there you go. But no, full credit to them, and I'm glad they enjoyed their day out, and I think most of them accepted they didn't really have much of a chance of winning the game, but I think they've picked up a second club, hopefully a few of them, so maybe seeing down some of the games down the London branch area, maybe.
Yeah.
You never know. Come and support us at Crawley away next season, if we're still in the league.
No.
Probably not. Probably be seeing them at somewhere, I don't know, Boreham Wood or something like that.
Yeah, probably.
But there you go. I think that's it, Mike. Other than say, just talking about the cup draw itself. Shrewsbury, not ideal, I suppose, playing a team from the division above, but one that's not doing that well this season, so maybe, you never know.
Yeah, if we sort of have turned a corner a little bit, it could well be, cup games are just a different kettle of fish, aren't they? And yeah, I'm not going to completely write us off, put it that way.
No, definitely not. Right, we'll take a short break now, and then we'll be back to discuss the big game against Barrow this weekend. So we're back in just a minute.
The buzz is back. We're all excited. I'll prove there's only one United. The world is watching this football team, 'cause I don't say what I don't mean.
There you go. That's the little bit something a little different for the break this time. We play that occasionally on the show, don't we? But I thought I'd do is
that the guy that blocked me on Twitter?
Yeah, it is. It's the guy that blocked me on Twitter. Yes. Okay, so we're on to the preview section of the show now, and as usual, this season the second half of the show has been sponsored by the Carl United Sports Club London branch. London branch is open to all Carl United fans. They've got members from Cornwall to Dundee and Houston to Singapore, and of course every part of London and the South East, and also up in Cumbria as well. They regularly meet up on away trips, as well as arranging many social events and sports games, and also do quite a bit of fundraising for the club. They'll be providing us with information for the away games as part of the preview section this season too. You can find out more about the London branch at their website, carlislelondonbranch.org. So there you go. That's the little bit of sponsors bit out of the way. Thanks once again to them. First up, we've got the catching up with the opposition section, and this week we spoke to Chris Altree, who is the Barrow Supporters Liaison Officer, and he's also the host of their official podcast. Ahead of this weekend's Big Clash Brunton Park, we covered a number of topics, actually, from how much things have changed since we last played them last season, Barrow's solid start to the season and their recent dip in form, how Mark Cooper has gotten on with Bluebirds boss, and also the many millions of ex-Blues players that are actually in the Barrow squad. So here's the chat I had with Chris earlier this week. Chris, thanks for giving up your time to speak to us about all things Barrow today. Let's get straight into it. we know that you guys don't really see United as your big rival. You look across Morecambe Bay and you look at Morecambe, obviously the big clashes you had, particularly back in your non-league days. And it's vice versa for us. We look down the M6 at Preston, albeit I think Preston very much look down on us these days, sadly. But there does seem to be quite a bit of excitement about what is the first competitive game between the two sides with fans in attendance in 57 years.
Yeah, I think for a lot of the younger support who weren't around in the 60s and, who haven't seen a game of this calibre in a long time, they see themselves as Cumbrians, so the idea of a Cumbrian derby is a big thing, especially as you've got crossover between rugby league and football, so there's obviously very competitive between Barrow rugby league sides and the coastal teams up the coast. So I think it's grown more the younger sport. Obviously those in our older sport will remember when we played Carlisle, but we were a Lancashire club then.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's just it's one of them that's just growing, like you say, you thing with Preston, it just like if we were to play each other more regularly over the coming years, then it'll just become bigger and a bigger thing. I mean,
yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? Yeah.
It's like we've got a bit of a thing with like Wrexham, Fylde when they came up. These things develop as fans when they play them so close together. I mean, we've not played Morecambe now in a league game for. It must be getting nearly 20 years. So so that one starts to fade. As the newer, younger support don't remember playing them.
Yeah, I mean, Morecambe for us actually became, I won't say a big derby game, but it was a game that everyone looked forward to, mainly because it was easy to get to. And I mean, arguably easier to get to than Barrow.
Yeah,
because of the way the roads are. So
yeah, well, everyone says, "Oh, yeah, taking 1,700 up to Carlisle, that's no big deal." Supporters elsewhere in the league, but we say no. It's 8 to 6 miles up some of the worst roads going. The train's nearly 3 hours up the coast, or you can change at Lancaster. So it's not actually that close. When people think of Cumbria, they think of it as this small county, don't they?
Yeah. But anyone who's been up the A595 road will know it's not an easy drive up from Barrow to Carlisle if you go that way rather than the M6.
No, yeah.
So, I mean, last season, you guys tried out, in your first season back in the EFL, two relatively young and inexperienced bosses, and it didn't quite work out. Now, this time around, you've gone for a bit more experience in Mark Cooper. How is he getting on in the hot seat? He seems to be doing an okay job so far, although things seem to have dropped off a little bit in the last month or so.
Yeah, I think the injuries have affected him, and we're crying out for a decent goal scorer. There's a lot of games where we're controlling the game, but it's sloppy goals given away, causing our own problems. And like I say, we're really missing that 20, 25 goal a season goal scorer. I mean, we did think that was going to be Zanzala, but jury's still out on him at the moment.
We'll discuss him in just a minute, but yeah, but he seems to be doing a fairly decent job, Coop. I mean, it's tough, isn't it, when you come back into the league, especially in the circumstances you guys did. And last season was clearly all about staying in the league, wasn't it, really, especially after the tough start you had, and eventually you managed it. So now this year, I suppose, ambitions have been raised a little bit at least?
Well, I think if you're most Barrow fans, it's about staying in the league, and the board, it's about stabilising. So we want to obviously stabilise at this level, then looking to push on. But if you do a bit better, I mean, obviously Cooper is an ambitious manager. He expects us to be pushing further up the table than just surviving. So for me, I just want to stay in the Football League as long as possible. It's as someone who's spent their whole time following Barrow as a non-league club, hearing the stories of us being a Football League team, it's making a welcome change.
Yeah, once you get there, you don't want to lose it, do you? That's the thing.
No.
You see other teams got me seen different sort of location circumstances. You see Barnet, I mean, they've been promoted 4 times to the Football League now, and they struggle to stay in there, and it isn't easy, especially you haven't got bucket loads of cash like a Salford have, for instance. I suppose being able to stay in the league for long periods. I suppose one of the things that I mentioned is that it is a bit of a difference between League Two and National League, isn't it? I know a lot of people say on the pitch there's not as big a disparity as there used to be in years gone by, but did you guys sort of notice the big disparity in terms of things on and off the field in terms of League Two and National League?
So I'll answer that in 2 parts. On the pitch, I would say the top 5 to 8 teams in the National League would be more than competitive in League Two in the bottom half. I don't see there's much difference. But then the bottom half of the National League are completely different to the bottom half of League Two. So in League Two, I know people say there's an easy game. I don't think there is an easy game. Mistakes get punished a lot quicker in League Two than they do in the National League, and obviously the standard officiating is different. Off the pitch, it's substantially different in how you even approach things like swapping ends. You have segregation, and every game has to be segregated. That's not the case in non-league. You have the fact that fans can migrate behind goals in non-league, even in the National League. Then you look at the finances. You get £80,000 for being a National League club. If after say if you went down, you get your 2 years parachute. But after that, it's 80,000. Where you're in the Football League, what's it, nearly £1 million you start off with every season. So that in itself's a difference. The EFL have all these different guidelines and rules, completely different. I mean, things like supporter liaison officers isn't a thing in non-league. There's loads. There's absolutely loads. It's like night and day, the comparison, really. Like, there's a lot Barrows. As spending 50 years nearly as a non-league club, there's not been that investment in the ground and stuff since it was a football league club. So there's a lot to get up to speed, and Carlisle fans will be most disappointed when it comes to the return game about how many tickets they're going to get.
Yeah. I'm sure there'll be a bit of a scramble, I think it's fair to say, to get tickets for that match. I mean, you mentioned the right things off the field. I mean, one example is the fact that obviously you guys don't benefit from the additional sub, did you? For a long period of last season, I remember, because obviously one of those players had to be homegrown, didn't they? So that's it. You had 6 subs in games, and you guys are just setting up your own academy now, aren't you? And that's a big process in itself. Yeah,
well, this is it. So we'll only have 6 subs for I don't know how long till we have our first homegrown player. I mean, we've had like a sort of academy, but it isn't. It was like a performance centre. And yourselves used to nick players from this part of the county for your academy, so there might be a bit of competition there for the younger players in the county now. So it's just getting started this season. Obviously, it's going to take a long time till you see the real benefits of that, and hopefully we can grow our own players like Carlisle have done successfully, and that will help self-fund the club.
Yeah. Let's talk about some of the ex-Blues in your squad now then. There's a fair few, I think it's 8 in total, I think I've counted, if you include Tom White. Obviously, Tom White was only a YTS with us. Yeah. Let's probably talk more about the ones who feature a bit more often for you, I think it's fair to say. So, starting off, Paul Farman. I think of the 2 that left in the summer from us, he's probably the one that the fans were the most disappointed about, partly because the issue seemed to be that you guys offered him a 2-year deal, we only offered him a 1-year deal, and he's one we probably could have kept if we tried a little bit harder. How's he doing so far? He seems to have established himself at first choice keeper.
Yeah, he's the first choice keeper. His kicking is tremendous. It's
incredible, isn't it? It's absolutely incredible.
He's done okay, to be honest. I mean, he's 1 or 2 mistakes, but it's a goalkeeper. If he makes a mistake, everyone remembers a goalkeeper. Yeah. He's a solid League Two keeper, and since losing Joe Dixon to Bolton, he's been a welcome addition. He does actually mention, because I interviewed him for the podcast we do down at Barrow, that he enjoyed his time at Carlisle, and it was purely because of, as you mentioned, the arrangements. They didn't meet his demands that he left.
Yeah, it's a real disappointment. You're right about his kick. I mean, the big thing for me of it is not so much the distance, it's the fact that you could play the ball back to him under pressure on either foot, and he launches it to the opposite half every time.
Yeah.
And this season, our keepers who've played so far, there's been a few times the ball they played back and they've scuffed it, and you just thinking, oh, God, what we do for Paul Farmer kicking that instead. But there you go. The other player who joined you this summer directly from us, you've mentioned him already, Ozzy Zanzala. He seems to be blowing a bit hot and cold like he did for us. He had the purple patch for us where he did well at the start. He struggled actually with us, to be fair. He seems to be a little bit in and out of the team. I know he's had a couple of knocks, but not quite convinced yet.
No, I'd say there's definitely, you feel like he's like, I don't know, like this. If a switch can be flicked, he could be a footballer that goes higher up the level. Yeah. But if that switch isn't found, then he's very much going to be a League Two, National League striker, dipping in and out till he gets this purple patch. I mean, he's strong. You have seen him. He's strong. He's explosive. He's got a good finish. He's only just came back for the game in the FA Cup, because prior to that he'd not well for a few games. So fingers crossed. I mean, he scored fortuitously, we'll say, on Saturday. That might just be a case that he starts rediscovering that touch that we hope he's got for us anyway.
I mean, you say fortuitous. I think it's good pressure, actually, to be fair. I was watching it on the train back down after our game against Horsham, and I was quite impressed. And I think most Carlisle fans expected him to score at the weekend. It's just an inevitability of life that he will score. A lad who came up for our youth system, Pat Bruff.
Yes.
He did okay at the start for us, but Keith Curl was never a big fan of young players or bringing through youth products, to be honest, so no shock that he let him go, really. But he's really rebuilt his career since leaving us, and he seems to be a really big player for you now, like a really important mainstay in the squad.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not well versed in League Two football, having not been here for years, so to know what a good left back is and a left wing back. But he is the Mark Cooper raves about him, thinks he can play a lot higher than League Two. He's definitely one of our most consistent players. He's a really good footballer, and I am amazed at Carlisle. With him living in Silloth, they let him go.
Well, the problem is we had Danny Granger at the time, and Danny Granger, you may know, was club captain, going to play any week he was fit, and obviously with his goals as well. I think he was a little bit unlucky by the circumstances, Pat, I think it's fair to say. He was actually a winger in the youth setup. He wasn't actually a full-back until he started playing a little bit of first-team football, so that does tell you a bit. A player who's certainly been at a fair few clubs at this level, and he's now your club captain and son, Mark Ellis. He was with us for a while. How's he getting? He seems to be that sort of big experienced head at the back that you've really been sort of crying out for. And have you seen his long throw yet? Because he took a few of those for us, actually.
Ellis isn't our long throw taker. It's a lad called Romeo Hutton that we got in the summer from Stevenage. So you'll see that on Saturday when he plays. But no, he's the captain centre back. He was actually subbed off in our last league game because Cooper thought he was struggling. So he didn't play in the FA Cup game either against Banbury. So I'm not too convinced actually that he might start on Saturday. So it might be a lad we signed from Blackburn, but we had him in our non-league days. Is Matty Platt. He's like this. He's been out with injury, but he was one of our most promising players. I mean, fantastic centre back on his day. So potentially, I think he might start ahead of Ellis.
Okay. The remaining four, I mean, Connor Brown only had a short loan spell with us, so we didn't really see a huge amount of him at Carlisle United, but he seems to have got himself back in favour of you. Tom White, obviously. Go on, Connor Brown then.
Connor Brown's like our Mr. Versatile. He'll play anywhere, he'll run through walls for you. A really nice lad. I don't know if he'll be the first to me. Not the most gifted of footballers, but if you want someone you can throw on, and know they'll do a 6 out of 10 job every time, then Connor Brown's that player, if that makes sense.
Yeah, definitely. Tom White, I mean, he was in our academy, and he was probably a little bit unlucky to get let go at the age of 18. Went to Gateshead, and we were actually very close to re-signing him before he went to Blackburn the other summer, and there was a bit of a mess up apparently in terms of getting him signed. So he's gone there, and obviously he's had his loan spells for use, and he signed permanently now. Seems to be doing okay.
Yeah. So we had him when Everett brought him to the club, and he was part of that midfield that was with John Rooney and that, doing amazing stuff in the National League. Then he went to Bolton with Everett. It didn't quite work out there, and we got him back in the summer. Just a really good young footballer. I don't think he'll start because I don't know if Cooper rates him highly as he does his other midfielders he's got in the team. So he's likely to be on the bench, is Tom White.
Yeah, and the final two, I feel really sorry to talk about these two because they've basically just been blighted by injury since he joined you, really. Mike Jones and Jamie Devitt, two very popular figures when they're at Carlisle United, especially Devitt, and our fans have been crying out to re-sign him for long periods. I don't think so much now because of his injury issues, but you've not really been able to see the best of those two, have you?
No, well, Mike Jones started the season last season till he got his injury. He was already top of League Two's most tackles or something before he got injured because he was the same with Hughes the season before. I think he was one of the highest tackling midfielders. Yeah, so we've not seen much of him. He's just played in the EFL Trophy game. That was his first game back. Okay. Got 80 minutes, so fingers crossed he's going to somehow play football again. Jamie Devitt, I don't know, to be honest. He just doesn't seem to be able to get himself fit. So I don't know if I suspect he might not be with us after this season, and we might never have got to see the best of him like you did.
It's a real shame with Jay, because he genuinely is a player of ability, and a player who could play at a higher level. And I think he was just unlucky in that he signed for Blackpool after he left us, and the manager who signed him was sacked literally, or left literally 2-3 weeks later. And Simon, I think it was Simon Grayson that took over there or someone like that, and basically just didn't rate him and said, no, you can go. So yeah, that just sums up JB Devitt's luck. Chris, you've been brilliant giving us up your time, so let's quickly do a little prediction for this weekend. How do you think the game's going to go?
Oh, well, the Barrow fans are very confident because of how your season's going.
It should be the way we're playing.
I manage a lot of Carlisle fans, so for my sanity, I need us not to lose on Saturday. I think it's actually going to be a draw. I don't know, these games always, I feel like they're very close. Last season was an incredibly tight game, which is 1-0. I think we're a slightly better team this year, and you might not be as good. And I don't know if that's just because of the management style. But I'm going for a 1-1 draw.
Right, I'll take that now. I'd bite your hand off for that one. Cheers, Chris, and thanks for your time.
Noise. Yeah, thank you.
Okay, thanks once again to Chris for giving up his time to speak to us ahead of this weekend's game. I hope he doesn't enjoy the game too much though this weekend, and hope that all those guys he works with in Carlisle are giving him a bit of stick come Monday morning. Interesting though, isn't it, Mike, how the ex-Blues are getting on at Barrow right now, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously there's quite a few of them, and a lot of them are now sort of solid Football League players, and when they left us, players like Brough, they couldn't really get a look in. So, yeah, it's good that they've managed to sort of make careers for themselves. I was a bit shocked that Zanzala isn't really doing it. I think, maybe if it had stayed here...
He took a while to settle, didn't he, with us? And,
he did, yeah.
He's one of those
and
ones,
I feel he's one of them that sort of, you have to play to his strengths.
Yeah.
And he's one of them, you said yourself that he's going to score against us because that's the way of the world. But he's an absolute nuisance for centre-backs, and I feel like I could be a nuisance for our centre-backs this season. So
that's
someone like him is going to probably cause him a lot of problems if fit.
Indeed. Okay, so just a quick reminder for everyone that this weekend's game is a 1 o'clock kickoff. It's not a 3 o'clock kickoff, 1 p.m. Thanks to our friends at Cumbria Constabulary for that one. So get yourself down early to Brunton Park. I think all the usual stalls and stuff are going to be open nice and early as well. So if you fancy some scran and a drink and things like that, you can get yourselves down. This weekend's referee is Martin Coy from Durham, a friend or an ex-uni. What's the phrase you say? Not classmate, I don't know. But anyway, basically... John McGee, who I mentioned a few times in the pod, he's an alumni of Durham Uni, and I think he went to Durham Uni at the same time as Martin Coy. Not a big fan of his, let's just say that. This is Coy's 5th season as an EFL referee. He's taken charge of 11 games this season so far. He's handed out 28 bookings and 1 red card. Being Durham-based, he generally covers about 2 or 3 United games a season usually, since he stepped up to be an EFL level ref. He's already taken charge of 1 United game this season. Our last win in the league, actually, for enough, the 2-1 win over Salford way back in August. God, I didn't even realise it was that long since we actually won a league game.
Yeah.
It's literally coming up to 3 months, and that's astonishing.
Because I was thinking, I haven't seen us win a game this season, because obviously I'm only off 1 Saturday out of 4, but not a lot of fans have seen us win this season. No,
it's incredible. I was at the Salford game, but obviously I wasn't at Swindon. So, if you're lucky enough to have been to both of those games, what a lucky person you are. But there you go. Okay, classic clash, Mike. Obviously, we haven't played the Bluebirds too much in the last 50 years or so. So we've had to go back into the archives this one. But I've gone right back into the archives, 91 years back into the archives to be precise, for one of our biggest ever EFL victories.
Were you at this game?
No. I can say a few of our fans probably were, knowing some of them, but there you go. Back to 8th of February 1930 for Carl United 7. That's brackets SEVEN brackets. Barrow 1. Yes, so this was only United's 2nd season in the Football League, while Barrow were in their 8th campaign, having been elected to 3rd Division North in 1922. it wasn't a great season for the then Lancashire club. He would end up finishing bottom and need re-election alongside Halifax to retain their league status the following season. It was actually one team did actually go out the league that season. It was the 3rd Division South side, the Welsh side, Merthyr Tydfil. They left the league that season, so there you go. The match report from the Athletic News newspaper that day makes it pretty clear that United's success on the pitch that day was very much down to Barrow's shortcomings, probably more than United's quality. So it tells you Barrow really were struggling that season. It was, a high-scoring game in the 1930s for United always suggests that one thing had happened, and no surprise to find out that Jimmy McConnell bagged himself a haul 4 goals in this fixture.
I was reading up on McConnell recently. I think he got 126 goals for us in 4 seasons. Yeah. 4 and a bit. That's incredible.
Yeah. Didn't even play that many games.
Because I was reading something the other week. I think it was someone for Villarreal became the club's all-time top goal scorer with 80 goals or something.
Yeah, it's surprised that some clubs have got really low scoring records.
Obviously clubs lower down. If a player starts scoring goals, he's off, isn't he? But McConnell for us, fair play, 120 odd.
Yeah, very impressive indeed. It was an early goal from McConnell, a one from Billy Watson that gave United a lead before Parker scored for the visitors, thanks apparently to a lapse in the United defence. Nothing changes there, does it? That was it for the visitors, though, as McConnell and Watson scored again before half-time, and McConnell added 2 more in the second half before Jimmy Thompson, who had apparently terrorised the Barrow right-back all game, grabbed a long-range screamer. While the season didn't end well for Barrow, it didn't actually get much better for the Blues either, actually. After this game, they drew 3-3 with Wrexham in the next fixture, and that left United in 6th place. But that was as good as it got, as they collapsed in the final 14 games and dropped down to 14th place in the league. Really not a great finish to the season, that one. The result remains one of United's biggest ever Football League victories, but the Bluebirds got their revenge the following season as they dished out a 7-2 victory of their own at Holker Street in January 1931. So there you go. That is our classic match. Don't have any YouTube highlights of it, sadly. But there you go. What we'll do is actually, I've got the clipping from the British Newspaper Archive of the match report from the Athletics News, so I'll stick that up on the Twitter feed as well so everyone can have a look at that. Play for both. So as usual, we've got a list of all the players who play for both clubs. And Dan, obviously he's not on the pod today, he's working. He sent me this in advance. So this is the player he picked. I don't know who it is, I haven't listened to it. I thought I'd surprise myself. So looking at the list, there's one player I think it might be. I reckon he'd be tempted to pick knowing him. But let's see whether he picked it or not. So here's Dan's play for both.
This week's played for both is a lad who still lives in the area. He'll be known to many of our listeners. Works at the post office these days. Was born in South Shields and was integral to one of the most famous episodes in the club. It is, of course, Graham Anthony. Started his career at Sheffield United. Only had 2 or 3 appearances there, a little loan at Scarborough. He had short spells at Swindon and Plymouth before he actually ended up at, I think it was Hebburn Railroad, non-league team in the North East. But he landed at Carlisle in 97 and he lasted a good 3 or so seasons. Made about 75 appearances and, of course, took the corner that led to Jimmy Glass's goal. When he left Carlisle, he went to Barrow for several years. I think he had about 250 to 300 appearances, including cups. And then he had a couple of seasons at Workington before retiring. And his Wikipedia says that he retired to run a guest house, which is true. But as everyone knows, he's also on the post. But that's this week's played for both, Graham Anthony.
You know what? I didn't fit. That was one of the ones I thought he might pick, but it wasn't the one I was sure he would pick. And when I read the list out, you'll know exactly which one I'm talking about here. It's Ian Stevens. But yeah, it's the good choice there from Dan. The guest house he run, I seem to remember, I don't know if it's still the case, some of the YTS players used to stay there, I think the club used to put them in there, and I think the idea was, as an ex-professional, he'd be a good person for them to stay with because he could, toss them about the game when they needed to and things like that. So there you go. Graham Anthony, good choice there, Dan. Okay, let's go through the full list then, Mike. It's another long one, as you'd expect. It's quite. I don't think this is a full list, though, because I think there'll probably be a few missing from players who maybe played for Barrow in the non-league days and didn't actually get picked up by the list, but there you go.
But there's no Jenison Murray Williams in this one.
No.
Or the other one.
We can't invoke the Jenison Murray Williams rule on this one, I'm afraid. Alf Agar is the first one. I think he's one from the very early days of United. Tom Aldred, he had a loan spell when he was at Colchester, actually, possibly. I think it was after he left United, or possibly when he was at Watford. I'm not 100% on that one, but yeah. Tom Aldred had a loan spell there. Obviously, left United a bit too soon, but I'm sure he's not regretting that while he's sunning himself on the beach in Australia these days, I'd imagine. Tom Anderson, he had a loan spell there, as he did from United from Burnley, doing quite well in the League One these days, isn't it? With Doncaster Rovers. Yeah, he occasionally pops up in the X-File section. Nick Anderton, he had a very good spell at Barrow, I seem to remember, back in the National League days. Obviously, Graham Anthony's already been mentioned. Ian Arnold, he spent some time with Barrow after his time with United. Richie Bennett, of course, United signed from Barrow. Yeah, the people's elbow himself didn't go very well in the end, though, did it? Bless him. Paul Black, I think we mentioned him a couple of times recently, haven't we?
Yeah.
I'll still never go.
The less said, the better.
We loaded a defender from League Two. When we were in League One, it's ridiculous, but there you go. Mark Boyd, probably better known for his Barrow days than he is for Carl United. I think he only played about 10 or 12 games for United, I think, towards the end of that season. We got relegated to the conference. He scored a brilliant goal at Scunthorpe, I seem to remember. Quite a long-range effort, the same night that Chris Billy scored a long-range effort as well when we won 3-2 there. But yeah, I think, like Anthony, I think he played about good 200 or 300 games for Barrow in the end, actually, and really popular figure there. And he does the co-commentary with Adam Johnson, actually, doesn't he? I imagine he'll be at Brunton Park this weekend doing that. Pat Brough, we'll touch on him in a minute, actually, and Connor Brown as well, both in the current Barrow squad. Connor Brown's loan spell at United, probably not quite so memorable, but there you go. Billy Buchanan's an early United player. Terry Colville's a very well-known Carl United player. He had a time at Barrow too. Mick Cody and Des Collins, they were both Blues and Bluebirds. Andy Cook never played a first-team game for United, did he? But
no.
It's one of those ones that got away, really, isn't it? Really, sadly. But there you go. Very successful in his time at Barrow. Sam Cosgrove, not too successful in his loan spell at Barrow in the same way he wasn't massively successful with us, was he? But he'll be back at Brunton Park soon with Shrewsbury. Tom Cowan, don't forget he went to Barrow after he left United, didn't he? For a short spell, didn't last too long there. I think by that point, I think he was pretty much winding up his career, wasn't he? And he was just winding down his career, and I think he was just looking to sort himself out. He's a firefighter these days, I seem to remember.
Yeah.
I've seen a few articles about that. Jamie Devitt has just had rotten luck ever since he's gone to Holker Street. Mark Doby, an interesting character. Carlisle born, but he only ever played 6 games for United. He, if you look at his Wikipedia page, it's just he is the definition of like a journeyman striker. Basically, he's been all over the place. He had a few spells at Gretna, a few spells at Workington. He was at Barrow as well. I think he was at Queen of the South for a short while. I think the only real football league experience beyond the 6 games he played for us was I think it was he played 39 games for Darlington and scored 9 goals in a season or something like that. I don't think he's any relation to Scott, by the way, just before anyone's curious there. Darren Edmondson, obviously a legendary player of United, really popular figure. Really popular at Barrow as well, did a decent job there as manager, I seem to remember back in the day too. Mark Ellis, obviously he's the current club captain at Barrow, and Paul Farman's obviously there as well at the moment. Steve Finney, he spent some time with Barrow after he left United. Simon Grand, he was a defensive partnership at Barrow with Danny Livesey, wasn't he? I think Danny Livesey was there as well. He was on the list later on.
And they're at Chester together now as well, aren't they?
And they were at Salford together as well. So it's come as a pair almost, don't they? But strange enough, barely ever played together at United, weirdly. That's them too. Lewis Guy, he went to Barrow as well after he left United. Wayne Harrison had a spell with both clubs. Tony Hopper had a brief loan spell towards the start of his career, I seem to remember, at Barrow, actually. It was like maybe a month or something, basically, to get a bit of experience. God rest his soul. Mike Jones appeared the other night for Barrow, actually, funny enough. His first appearance in 12 months. Great to see him back on the pitch. Luke Joyce, I think, did he go to Barrow after he left us, I seem to remember? For a bit.
No, he went to Accrington after he left us.
Did he have a loan spell up thing then? I can't seem to remember it.
I can't remember.
I'm going to look that up now while we're talking. Obviously doing an AFC file these days in the National League North. He had a loan spell at Barrow from us. He only played 5 games at Barrow, actually. I thought, for some reason, I was sure he went there for a bit longer. I couldn't remember, but there you go. So yeah, he had a loan spell for 5 games at Barrow. Who have we got next? Danny Livesey we mentioned already. Kenny Lowe, infamous Kenny Lowe, who obviously was played in that game at Northampton the season we won the 3rd Division title 94-95, which went down in infamy basically because of the fact that it was just a bit of a shambles really, and I think he only played about 2 games in his loan spell. I think that was it, and then he was sent back to Birmingham. I think he was on loan from. Brendan McGill, he went to Barrow as well after he left. Some of these you completely forget that they actually went to Barrow, don't you? Before the end of their careers. Stephen McMahon, I should say, not the Steve McMahon that played for Liverpool. Should make clear it's a different one. He had spent time at both clubs. Colin Methven, Indian born, Scottish though. I think his family originally Scottish, but he was born in India. He was at both clubs. Glenn Murray famously did very well at Barrow in his short spell there before he came to us. Paul Raven, he went to Barrow, I think, again, after he left us. Stephen Riggs, similar. Gavin Rothery. God, I didn't realise he'd gone there.
I forgot he was with us, to be honest.
Yeah, 3 or 4 games, I think that was it, wasn't it? Kevin Sam, we've had a pretty good spell at Barrow, I seem to remember. I might be wrong on that one. Brother of Bill, Jimmy Shankly. He played for both clubs in the very early days of United in the league. Gavin Skelton had a decent spell at Barrow. I think he was manager there for a bit as well, but he did okay there. Jeff Smith, he spent 2 games on loan there, I think, at the very start of his career. Ian Stevens went to them after he left us, and famously, obviously, Roddy Collins tried to re-sign him after that. David Simon had a short, I think he left Workington to go there for a short spell, and I think he just realised it wasn't that, because they were still obviously challenging to try and get back into the league and stuff back then, or get back to being professional. And I think he thought, this just isn't for me, and went back to playing for Workington. Ben Tomlinson, less said about him the better. Tom White and Ofrande Zanzala. So there you go. So that's the full list. I'm just having a quick look through the managers list here, because I thought there might be a few possibly linkers in terms of management, but actually looking down here, there's actually there isn't as many as I thought, to be honest. Darren Edmondson obviously managed Barrow as well. Darren Sheridan's brother of John, so that doesn't really count, does it? Kenny Lowe managed Barrow. Yeah, that's pretty much it. There's no real names that have managed both clubs, to be honest. It's a short list that in terms of that. Yeah, so there you go.
I think you'll struggle to get a list as long as that list of ex-players, though.
No,
this season.
I think a couple of them have come close. I can't remember which ones, but Rothschild will be an interesting one, because I imagine there's a few links with that. Hartlepool was quite a high one as well, wasn't it? So, yeah, we'll have to see. All right, Michael, let's talk about the game itself, about Barrow AFC. In terms of head-to-head, we've played them 62 times in competitive fixtures in our history, of which we've won 24, 17 have been draws, and Barrow have won 21. They had a tough first season back in the Football League, didn't they, Mike? After almost 50 years away, but they seem to have settled a bit better this time, don't they? They've brought a bit of experience in, and a manager and players who've got decent levels of EFL experience.
Yeah, I mean, I feel now they're sort of able to sort of settle in the Football League and become a Football League club. I mean, my big fear, genuinely terrifies me, is obviously we went decades and decades without sort of playing in the same league as them, because one of the clubs was a terrible non-league club and the other was in the Football League, and that could happen again, but will be the terrible non-league club. It could genuinely happen, and it terrifies me.
That does worry you, doesn't it? It does worry you indeed. They seem to have a decent level of ambition. I think they're being fairly realistic with what they're trying to achieve. I think they're trying to keep themselves in the league this season. I mean, last season, I think for any club coming into the league last season would have been a nightmare. It would have been just so difficult. You had to basically manage what you had, didn't you, really, in terms of COVID and stuff like that. But in terms of, you look at over the summer, they seem to have invested in wages a bit. I mean, they brought a couple of players in who, maybe a couple of years ago, they wouldn't have had any chance at hell of signing. People like Robbie Gotts from Leeds and stuff like that. And they're looking to set up their you've set up, aren't they? I think. I mean, starting that from scratch must be a bit of a nightmare. And they must be thinking it's time to stop Carlo pinching some Southern Cumbrian players. Although, to be honest, I mean, Chris mentioned from the Barrow podcast, we've pinched some in the past. I don't think there's actually that many we've pinched from South Cumbria. I think you probably find most of them tend to get taken by Preston off end, basically. They're the ones who
they do.
Maybe Morecambe, we've got a few in the past as well. So I don't think we tend to get that many. We tend to go over to Newcastle really for extra ones, don't we? So So there you go. I mean, obviously this is a home game, so we're not getting a chance to see. But I mean, Holger Street still looks a bit of a non-league ground, doesn't it? When you look at it on telly, it's still a little bit ramshackle. But bit by bit, they're doing little bits. They've got the little fan zone behind the goal and stuff like that. They've done the behind the Holker Street end, putting a roof on it, although those supporting pillars are just going to be an absolute nightmare when we play down there. But let's talk about the manager, Mark Cooper. He's certainly not the shy of retiring type, is he, Mark Cooper? I think it's fair to say. He's always one who's had a bit of an opinion and certainly thinks quite highly of himself. I think that's probably fair to say. And he sort of divides a lot of fans, especially at lower league clubs, doesn't he? Some of them really like him, some of them hate him, and that's some of the people whose clubs he's managed as well. He's not too popular with Leyton Orient fans, is he, for something he said, or allegedly said, when they played against them, which he's denied, and the FA didn't decide to take a charge against him, but the Orient fans, it's interesting on that one as well, because he actually played for Leyton Orient as a player. He spent the season there, and he did quite well, so you think, why would you do that against a club where you're probably quite well liked? It's strange behaviour, to say the least. He's generally done decent jobs at most of the club he's been at, but he's never quite been able to get them to the next step or take his career to the next step, has he? Because he started out 20 years ago at Tamworth. I remember he was manager of Tamworth when they beat us in the conference, wasn't he? When Matt Redmile scored that goal, and we were in that bush shelter behind the goal. Absolute dump of the ground that was, God help us. And then he had his time at Kettering, and he did really well at Kettering, and that led to Peterborough looking to bring him in to replace Darren Ferguson, who by that point had gone to Preston, possibly. I think he'd left Peterborough before. I seem to remember the first time he left them. And it was an absolute disaster for him there, wasn't it? I think he lasted 13 games and he got sacked, basically. And I think that was a bit of an emotional wrench for him as well, because he left Kettering just as they'd drawn Leeds in the FA Cup. And Leeds were the club that his dad played for, Terry Cooper, for years and years and years. So that was a game that would have meant a lot to him, and he had to leave before that game, I seem to remember. So then to get sacked 13 games later, you think, why did I bother? I mean, obviously the payoff will probably help a little bit, but there you go.
Yeah.
I mean, since then he's been back into the non-league with Darlington, Kettering again for one game, and he left after off-the-field issues, and a short spell at AFC Telford. Then he had spells at Swindon Town as assistant, and then became full-time manager. Then left them to go to Notts County, and I think at Notts County he was told, wasn't he, that if he got a certain number of points, he was going to get the job on a full-time basis, and he hit that points total, and then basically said, "I'm not going to stay." And he went to Forest Green because his last game in charge was the game where we beat them 5-0 on the last day of the season. Yeah. He went to Forest Green. He had 5 successful years. He'd been a player there as well at Forest Green, so I think he was fairly well liked. 5 very successful years getting him into the league, but he just couldn't quite get them to make the next step up. No. And they decided to dispense of his services last season, didn't they? And,
they seem to be doing better off without him so far.
Oh, certainly, yeah. But a really good job they're doing so far this season, as I'll keep reminding you, I predicted them to finish top. But yeah, he took over at Barrow in the summer, and he seems to have done a solid job so far, would you say?
Yeah, I mean, I don't entirely know what the sort of board's expectations are there. But, I mean, they're not a million miles off the playoffs, to be honest with you. Like, they're sort of mid-table-ish, aren't they? I mean, I regrettably did that bet in the summer that they'll go up. Because, to be honest, I think they look more likely than we do this season.
I mean, you say they're not far off the playoffs. They're 5 points off a playoff place.
Yeah.
But they're only 6 points ahead of us.
Yeah.
If we beat them on the weekend, we're 3 points behind them. So it's still fairly tight at the moment, isn't it? That's the thing. And actually, I mean, we'll talk about the recent form in a second, but the form's not great at the moment. In terms of the squad, Starman, I deliberately avoided picking an ex-United player for this one because I want to try and move away from it. A player that I really like and I would have loved to have seen us sign in the last couple of years, and I think he's done really well there, and he's done well the last couple of clubs. Ollie Banks. He's got a decent pedigree at this level now. He's the former Oldham and Tranmere man. He's already become a key member of their squad since he signed in January, hasn't he? And this season he's bagged 8 goals in 18 appearances. When you watch him, he's about 6'2", isn't he? So he wins a lot in the air as well, which is really useful. He kind of reminds me of a little bit more cultured John Mellish in that sense. You know, he's a little bit better on the ball. He's trained as a midfielder rather than a defender, isn't he? That's probably helped him. But he certainly, he's 29 now, so he's at the peak of his career, so he should be doing well. But he certainly plays, seems to be imposing on games, and certainly be one to watch out. In terms of other key squad members, I've picked a few out here. You might want to pick a few out, Mike. Robbie Gotts, signed from Leeds. I think he was very highly thought of in the Leeds academy, wasn't he? And I was a bit surprised he dropped to that level, but I think Barrow might have splashed a little bit on wages to bring him in. Former United player Pat Brough done a brilliant job to rebuild his career, hasn't he? He's really good to see him doing well.
I think he scored more goals last season than our strikers, didn't he? From like left wing back.
Possibly. He scored quite a few since Tranmere.
Yeah.
You might be right on that one. And another one, Josh Gordon, one of the summer recruits from Walsall. He seems to be settling in quite well now. He's a player who's always impressed me, but he's also one that he's impressed me at the same time, flat to deceive a bit. You always feel like you're good, but you're not doing as well as you really should be doing. And the fact that he's left Walsall to go to Barrow maybe suggests to me he's still not quite hitting the expectations you would from a player of his quality. Any others you'd pick out from the squad, Mike?
No, I mean, to be honest, it's all of the sort of ex-Blues that we kind of mentioned before. Like, you know, you said that you wanted to avoid mentioning ex-Blues with it, but you kind of can't, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, in the Starman bit, I wanted to avoid it, but I mean, you look through them, I mean, we've got to mention the two that left in the summer to go down the A595, Paul Farman and Ozzy Zanzala. I mean, start with Farman. I mean, I don't think there's much doubt we've missed him a bit this season, and his presence in goal.
Yeah, obviously his presence in goal, and like you mentioned to the Barrow guy, his kicking. We've really, really missed that. It's and like I say, obviously Zanzala, you know, he's a nightmare to defend against. But yeah, I'm confident though. I don't think that they've won in something like the last 5 league games.
No. We'll touch on the form shortly. Their form's not great at all, actually. To be honest, in the league at least. Anyway.
Yeah, but I think this is just going off the top of my head. They've only failed to score in something like 2 league games this season.
Well, against our defence, they don't have much trouble there.
Yeah, so they always seem to manage to at least score. So it might be a case if we have to score more than.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, with Farman and Zanzala, I think it's interesting to see what reception they get from the fans. Because, I mean, Hope got a bit of stick at the Oldham game, didn't he? And I thought it was a bit weird because I don't think Hope was a particularly bad person. And we got a transfer fee for him when he was out of contract at the end of the season. He could have left for nothing, couldn't he?
It's our fans, so like we could literally have a player like walk on water during the floods and save a baby from a house and leave us, and then like they'll just boo them next time we played against them.
I mean, I think there's a little bit contrasting between the two in that Farman left because we didn't offer him a 2-year deal based on security. Essentially, that was the big problem. We all know that now, and that's fair enough. And I think he probably deserves a good applause because he was a good player for us last season, a big player. Zanzala came in for his half a season, was by all accounts offered a fairly decent deal, and basically turned it down to go and get a bit of extra money down the road at Barrow. Yeah. Which he's entitled to do. He's entitled to do. But if you're going to give either of them stick, I think he's probably the one you would give stick, isn't he? To be honest, out of the two. Yeah. But there you go.
But I can 100% see with Zanzala as well, he is not going to be the player who kind of mutes his celebrations when he scores against us. Like he's going to love it, isn't he? Like, you just know he is.
I'd imagine Farman will be similar if he saves the penalty and stuff like that. You know what he's like. He's got his odd little ticks and stuff like that, hasn't he? So, so there you go. Obviously, we touched on Brough already, but I mean, in terms of the other players, I mean, Mark Ellis is the club captain there. He got subbed in a game the other day because he was struggling a bit. He didn't play against Banbury in the FA Cup, so whether he'll feature this weekend, we don't know. It'd be nice to see him back at least. I think he was a player who did really well for us. I mean, Tom White, most fans probably won't even realise he was on our books for quite a while, to be honest. That's probably not even worth mentioning. Connor Brown, we discussed before, he did okay in his loan spell. He was solid enough, He came in and did a job, basically, didn't he, for his few months. And the other two former Blues favourites, Jamie Devitt and Mike Jones, have just had rotten luck with injuries. I mean, Jones played the other night, which was lovely to see.
Yeah.
Probably not going to feature this weekend because I think he basically said he was blown out his backside after 80 minutes the other night because he'd so long since he'd played. And Devitt is just one thing after the other for him, isn't it? And it's really sad actually to see the way his career just is completely stagnated, at best, really, since he left us.
Yeah, it's a shame. It might be one of them retirement by defaults by the end of the season. I think he might struggle to certainly get another Football League club.
I'd imagine it might be one where he has to look at National League possibly, and somewhere like an AFC Fylde maybe where you can play a little bit and can earn stuff on the side. Yeah, so there you go. That's the ex-Blues. Like you said, Mike, there in terms of current form, they actually sit 18th in the last 6 games form table. As you mentioned, they haven't won in the last 5. They're United. I should say United are bottom of the form table. So let's not crow about anything here. Like we're Barrow being that low. We're bloody awful. So there you go. But yeah, if you go back to the last 6 games, back to the 6th last game, the record is one drawn, lost, drawn, lost. Basically, so they're not really. They've dropped off quite a bit because they were around about the playoffs when they got that last win, weren't they? I think, and they've really dropped down at the table.
And I think that last win was against Mansfield, who had 10 men.
Yeah,
so,
it was indeed. It was indeed. They're hoping to pick up their first win against United since 1960. Or if I'm going to be slightly fair, I should say in 8 games, basically, since they last beat us. So there you go. So it's a little bit of a misleading statistic, that I think it's fair to say.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm expecting a tough game. I really am. I think it's going to be. I think it could be exciting. I mean, look, they've sold 1,500 or 1,700 tickets for the game, haven't they? Which is fantastic. Great for them. We obviously don't get as many in return because Holker Street is too small. But yeah, it should be a really interesting game, shouldn't it? And hopefully a decent atmosphere. And I mean, the club have put a tweet out today to say, we've sold just under 6,000 tickets. I'm presuming that's including the Barrow tickets. Get yourself down for get yourself tickets in advance. Now, normally there's quite a few walk-ons, so probably pushing on 7,000 the attendance for the game. Well, I'd say I'm a bit disappointed that's the first real mention of the game from the club.
Yeah, I mean, we've said ourselves we don't call it a derby, but I think from a marketing point of view, the club should maybe sell it up a little bit.
Look, it's one of those things. It's like the guy from the Barrow said that for the younger fans, it is more exciting because they consider themselves Cumbrians. Barrow, and for them, it's first time we ever got to replay them since the 60s and stuff like that. So it's exciting. We should be clinging on to that and finding the hook and pushing for it, pushing it as the big story. That's what we should be doing. Yeah, but yeah. A little bit disappointing. I feel like if they really tried, they could have got to about 8,000 or 9,000 for this game potentially. As it is, we'll probably get 7 or 8. I mean, that's probably just over 7. I think
that's the thing as well. The whole 10K for MK and all that we did. Like the club can market a game and sell tickets.
You almost wonder if they're a little bit worried that we don't want a big crowd and the way we're playing at the moment, it's too big of a crowd and messing up, but. It's ridiculous when you think that, but there you go. Well, let's talk about United then. Obviously, Josh Dixon and Magnus Norman are both out. Brendan Dickinson hoping to have recovered from the dead leg he picked up against Northampton a couple of weeks ago, but again, we don't really want to rush it. I think if he's fit, he comes back in, I think, to be honest. I know Clough did okay in the wing, but I'd get him straight back in if he is fit. We said it in the review section. Isn't it high time that Alessandra and Abrahams were dropped? Yeah. I mean, Abrahams has only come back in the last couple of games. It's probably harsh to say time they were dropped, but I think it's Young has earned his chance, hasn't he?
Oh, definitely. I mean, for me, it looks like Millen quite likes 4-4-2 or like a variation of it.
I wonder if that's basically... He has admitted he's not basically a stickler for I only play this formation. He's looking at the players we've got available and saying, right, we're going to have to play this, isn't it? That's what he said.
Yeah, I mean, it was something... To be honest, wasn't something we mentioned in the sort of post-match discussion, but they were talking about it on Radio Cumbria quite a bit, and that's John Mellish. Can he play as a 2 in midfield? And
I'm not sure he can.
No, they weren't so sure. And for me, I think the way to do it is play Clough in the hole, number 10. Keep Mellish on the bench, but bring him on at 60 minutes. And because Mellish is generally not very effective in the last 30 minutes of a game when he's picked up a silly booking earlier on. So bring him on at 60 minutes against tired players and he'll just chase down everything. He'll barge into everyone. He'll cause so many problems. But, I'm not saying bring him on as a 10. I'm saying, take Clough off as a 10 and bring Mellish right into the middle, into the thick. And obviously stick Young as your lone striker.
Well, yeah. Well, what you just do then is basically you go to a 4-3-3, stick Mellish into the three, and push Dickinson and Gibson a bit further up the pitch.
Yeah,
for the last 20 minutes or something like that. And I'm with you. I'd 100%. I'd give Young a start in this game. I mean, he probably won't. I'm pretty sure he won't actually. But I'd have been tempted to put Fishburne in even. To be honest, I know it sounds mad, but I think the lad thrives on the pressure. I think he looks really up for it in games, and I hope he's on the bench at the very least. I hope that we don't see him drop from the bench because he's shown enough in those games that I think he's worth a run of at least coming on and causing problems in games. I'm with you. I think I'd probably look at maybe dropping Mellish. I think I'd probably look at. It's a tough one because obviously Mellor came in for the game on Tuesday night that we don't talk about, and you do wonder maybe does he want to bring him back into experience in defence? Do you maybe then look at? Oh, sorry, I should have mentioned the injuries. Lucas Jensen is also out injured as well, isn't he? He's picked up a wrist injury, so he's going to be out for a little bit. So it's going to be Scott Simons probably on the bench or Gab Breeze, whichever one of them. It's. So I think the team I'd probably go would be Howard in nets, Mellor at right back, Armour at left back. I mean, you've not got much choice there, to be honest. Centre backs, I can't see him changing Whelan and McDonald. And this is his last chance to live for McDonald. We didn't mention him in the review section because there wasn't really any point because the defence had nothing to do. But if he can't do it in this game, then that's it. He's out of the team for me.
Yeah,
it's his last chance. I wouldn't probably have started it, but I'd be looking to get Feeney into the team potentially. I think he's a better defender than both of them.
Yeah, definitely.
But I mean, saying all this, Devine played in the midweek game, and so did Whelan in midfield. And you do wonder if he's maybe looking at those as potential options. I wouldn't read too much into that game because it's a nothing game that means nothing. So, but yeah, I'd play Gibson on the right. So obviously, I should say that McDonald and Whelan have been centre backs. I think I can't see beyond that. Gibson on the right. If he's fit, Dickinson on the left. If not, Clough there, and then I'd play Riley and Guy in the middle.
Yeah,
and up front. If Dickinson's fit, Clough and Young. If Dickinson's not fit, Clough on the left. And then I'd play Young. And I'd probably play Alessandro with Young, actually. I think that might work quite well, actually. I think, in my personal opinion. Yeah, I wouldn't have Abrams in the team, personally, on what I've seen. The last few games not been good enough, frankly. So yeah. But yeah, that's more or less what I'd play. I don't know what your thoughts are on it, Mike.
Yeah, I mean, I think the back four is probably going to be roughly what you've just said. Yeah, like I say, I'd probably have Riley and Guy sitting behind Clough in the 10 and then take Clough off on 60 minutes. And I'd have, what's his chops? On the right?
Gibson,
that's the one.
I forgot his name.
Yeah, I know. Him on the right and maybe Dickinson if he's fit on the left. I mean, then again, Taylor Charters doesn't really disappoint when he plays wherever you play him. And obviously Young up front, and hopefully Abrams not even in the matchday squad.
Ooh, that's a bit harsh, isn't it? Really?
Well, I'd rather see Fishburne, and you know.
Can you fit both? That's the question. I don't know, but there you go. So let's do predictions then. Dan sent me his predictions, so I'll play Dan's first. That's tradition. So here's Dan's prediction.
The Radio Cumbria Derby. Nothing less than a 5-0 win, please. Clough hat-trick, Young and Gibson. Let's smash these Barrovians. Up the Blues.
Oh, my God, I can't believe he's done that. I can't believe he's actually done that. Oh,
well,
go on, Mike. Tell me yours.
Like I say, I think they've only gone 2 league games without scoring. So I'm gonna go for a 3-2 thriller, and I'm gonna go for Clough scoring 1, Young scoring the other, and Sam Fishburne coming off the bench to score a late winner.
Oh, you're reading my mind a little bit there, Mike, because
Yeah.
I'm going for a goal fest. I'm going to go for a 4-3 win. 70 and I'm going to go for Clough to get a goal, Young to get a brace, and then, like you, I think Fishburne will come on and get the winner.
Yeah.
And it'll be absolute scene. 90th minute winner, absolute scenes, tears in the away end. Oh, I've got the bug from Dan. What have I done? Oh no! Oh no! What have I done? Yeah. So there you go. That's our predictions for the A595 Derby. Oh, blimey, we're going to be embarrassed, aren't we? I think after saying all this. So there you go.
Yeah.
X-File section, Mike. It's not as long as usual, so we'll bash through it quickly. Dan's obviously not here to do it. First up, I had to double check this one because the official record of it on the BBC site didn't show him up as scoring it. Ryan Loft scored an own goal in Scunthorpe's 1-0 defeat to Doncaster Rovers. I watched the video of it. It is an own goal. It's a great own goal. Actually, he slices a volley into the top corner of his own net. Brilliant stuff from Ryan Loft. So they lost 1-0 to Doncaster Rovers in the first round of the Cup. Joe Garner, he scored in Fleetwood's 2-1 defeat to Burton Albion. Again, this one, I watched this goal, and it sort of comes in, it's across the sort of 6-yard box, or more or less across 3 yards out, and he swings it, and I think he's almost putting it wide, but it hits a defender in the face and goes in. So probably an own goal, really, but Garner's been given it. Mark Cullen, he scored in Hartlepool's impressive 2-2 draw with League One side Wycombe Wanderers. Adam Campbell, he scored in Gateshead's 2-2 draw with Altrincham. They were 2-0 up in this Gateshead, and they conceded 2 late goals, including a 95th minute equaliser. Rotten luck for them that day. Gary Medini scored a penalty in Blackpool's 1-1 draw with QPR, and Callum O'Hare scored in Coventry City's 3-2 win over Bristol City. Zanzala scored in Barrow's 4-0 win over Banbury in the FA Cup. Good bit of pressure this from Zanzala, actually. He sort of closed it down and nipped in to score the goal. Decent bit of play from him. Ryan Bowman, he seems to have gone from strength to strength since his little heart scare, wasn't he, really? It's quite incredible. He scored a brace in Shrewsbury's 5-1 win over Stratford Town to earn them a place against United in the next round of the Cup. And finally, Aaron Hayden scored in Wrexham's 5-0 win over Aldershot in midweek. I should say that Gimme Torrey didn't play in this game. He's picked up an injury. So I'd imagine he's probably on his way back to Brunton Park in the next week or two when his loan spells up. I can't see him staying there. And the only other bit of news for the X-Files this week is that Adam Clayton has left Birmingham City after having his contract terminated by mutual consent. I've seen a few fans suggesting we should go in for him. Let's be realistic here. Adam Clayton is not coming to Carlisle United.
No,
He's
never.
going to probably maybe a low-end championship club, but probably a League One club. He'll be snapped up by them, no, but he's not dropping to a team that he's struggling to stay in the league.
And it's not as well, by all accounts, it's not like he has particularly fond memories of his time with us. I think
he did okay, and I think he did
okay. But I mean, like at the time, he was sort of very much of the mindset like, I'm at Man City, I'm only on loan here. Yeah. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think he might have grown up a little bit better than I don't know. But yeah, I think we need to be very realistic when it comes to Johnny Belt, the kind of players we can go for. That said, I've heard a few whispers that we might be going in for Paul Huntington maybe at Preston. I mean, it's one that fans have been calling for anyway, but I mean, it might just be the old jungle drums coming out with nonsense. But would you forgive him for what happened at Leeds? I tell you what, if he kept us in the league, he'd do what the hell he wants, quite frankly.
Well, he fits the bill of experienced centre-back, doesn't he, now? So.
Oh, yeah, I'd genuinely be brilliant. I genuinely think he'd be a brilliant sign for us if we could get him to come. But I'd imagine there'd be a lot of teams interested in his services, and whether he wants to come to his hometown club but be in a relegation battle is another thing altogether. Well, there you go, Mike. That's today's episode done. Thanks once again to our sponsors, the London Branch. Remember, you can subscribe to the podcast via all good podcast apps, whether it's Google, Acast, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. You can find us all in there. Just search for the Brunton Bugle, click subscribe, and every time we put a new episode out, it'll come straight into your app. You can follow us on social media, at Brunton Bugle on Twitter. Search for Brunton Bugle on Facebook. And we're also on the Be Just and Fear Not Facebook group and on the Companies.net message board as well. And if you want to drop us an old-fashioned email, you can do that to bruntonbugle@gmail.com. I should mention, you remember we talked last week about the supporter option thing that you probably hear now at the start of the podcast. You'll hear the little message saying if you want to support this podcast, you can make a monthly donation. Find it in the description for the show. Overwhelming the support we've had, Mike, aren't we? Really, we've had an incredible amount of contributions. The amount we've had so far, we've basically had the equivalent amount we had in the previous month already for this month, and I think as a result, we've probably covered about 7 or 8 months of the studio costs for the podcast, which is fantastic. We're not demanding money. We're not desperate for it. We're not saying you need to give it or we're not going to do it anymore. It would be really helpful if you did, and people have been so generous. So thank you so much. A big shout out to all them, especially to the Newcastle United fan who's donated £5 to us. Brilliant for you to do that. I think his granddad was a Carl United fan base and he follows us as the second team. So fantastic. And there's a few people we all know who've contributed as well. And doff my cap to you all. Thank you very much for your contributions. There's no new countries on the world map this month, by the way. This week even I've had a look, and no one's been anywhere exotic recently. So if you know someone who lives in a really weird country or something, just tell them to download an episode. Don't even care if they're a Carl fan. I just want to be able to say, look, it's there. It's on the stats. We've had a listener there, so there you go. Upcoming episodes, Mike, before we finish. Obviously, next week we'll be previewing the Exeter City game, but we're also potentially going to do a little special episode for this, aren't we?
Yeah, because regrettably we're going to drive down, aren't we?
What's got into us? I don't know. Basically, we've both got a free weekend that we didn't think we'd both have. You knew you had the free weekend. We were going to give it a miss, but I've had a free weekend come up at the last minute, so as a result, I'm probably going to be going down with you to Exeter next week. So we'll do a little road trip episode talking about what it's like driving down and stuff and what it's like down there, because there's an interesting setup at Exeter now. It's changed a lot. I think last time I went was 10 years ago. Hell of a long time.
I've never been. I just want to get it ticked off and done. So.
I wasn't sure if you'd actually been or not, so there, fair play. We'll get that ticked off, yeah. So we'll be doing that, and obviously the State of the Club episode, but I'm hoping we'll record it on this Sunday after the Barrow game, basically, because I'm hoping Dan might be free, but I'll have to double check on that one. So that could be an interesting one if we do that. Then, if not, it'll be the week after probably. So we'll get something done, and we'll ask for some of your contributions toward that as well. If you want to tweet us what you want us to talk about in terms of that, please do. And I think that's it, Mike, isn't it? That's it for this week. Hopefully we'll all be celebrating being Cumbria's top side at the weekend. There we go. Thanks everyone for listening, and up the Blues.
Up the Blues.